Hello, you're listening to Me and Paranormal You with your host, Ryan Singer. Because it's more fun to believe. And boom, we're off and running. Hey everybody, thank you for listening to another experience of Me and Paranormal You. This is Ryan Singer. We're trying a new audio setup because we're traveling today. We're in Tennessee right now at an undisclosed location.
Yeah, we're at an undisclosed location at my house, but don't tell anyone.
Don't
what
tell
my
anybody.
living room is.
So that was the voice of Ed Brown, researcher, investigator, who we're going to have to talk. I actually got a message about this today that I saw. Well, I don't know when the message came in. I'm behind answering those. But someone asking me what episode it was that I recorded, because I did just a solo once I got back to my home 3 years ago after Florida.
Right.
I just kind of tried to record so I could get it fresh.
It was a good idea, yeah.
And so I had to go look that up, and I was like, oh, that's interesting. I'm getting ready to sit down with Ed Brown, which is also the name of your podcast.
It is. Sit down with Ed Brown, yeah. Thanks for the plug.
Yeah, check it out on YouTube. There's actually an interview with Bill and Carolyn.
Yeah, there is. Yeah, I had a live video sit down with them. It was great. They're awesome. I mean, they're great people, and they're so genuine. Everything, it's odd when things sound so unbelievable, but then the people, it's true just by your interaction with the people. Their demeanor and their hospitality and the way they come across. You know what they're going through is real. You know it is. And then when we go there and we get, in my opinion, proof of things that are going on, it's pretty strong.
Yeah, and it made me think of something just now. If everybody in the world who doesn't believe in this stuff could meet one person who's had an experience and hear their story face to face, even.
Absolutely.
It's even another level from doing a podcast or being on TV or video or anything else. Like if you meet the person, because I think that's a key component to believing in the paranormal when it comes to secondhand stories.
Sure.
The source of that. And if you're actually in a room with the person, feel their energy, kind of, you intuitively and instinctually as creatures, we get a sense of a type of person whenever we meet them.
Absolutely right. And it's funny you bring it up because I have a perfect example of just that happening the other day. I've had the privilege and the honor to actually sit down and talk to Bob Gimlin several times. I've interviewed him twice for my show, and he is just the most amazing person. His life story is just amazing. It's awesome. But I had a non-believer we were talking about, and I said, and I told him, if you spent 5 minutes talking to Bob Gimlin and you don't believe that video is real, then I don't know what to tell you. Then you're just nothing's gonna convince you because he's so genuine. Sure enough, it was my brother actually. To his credit, he did a little research. He watched a few interviews with Bob, and he called me up and he said, "Look," he goes, "either it's real or he's just a really good liar." And I said, "Yeah." And he goes, "And now there ain't," to give Bill his credit, he said, "And there are good liars out there." I'm like, I'm gonna tell you what, this guy he should win an Oscar if he's lying, because I'm telling you, if you just spent 5 minutes with this man, and I'm not kidding, and you just watch his mannerism, his facial expressions, his excitement when he's talking about it, how he changes from that was scary to how he felt after it happened and what led up to it, and it's amazing. It's amazing.
Yeah, and considering the amount of ridicule and, for lack of a better term, the shitstorm that circles around his life,
Sure.
Especially over the years, there's and let's be frank here, Bob didn't get rich from having the most definitive and most legendary piece of Bigfoot evidence in the world, which is the Patterson-Gimlin film.
He could have been rich. He was offered $1 million just to say it was a hoax. I don't know if you know that, right?
I did not know that.
Yeah, he was.
Who offered him $1 million?
It was some magazine or TV channel, something. I know it was some media offered him $1 million just to admit that it was a hoax. And at that time, I got to preface this by saying, at that time, even if it was real, he had plenty of reason to say it was fake because Roger Patterson kind of stabbed him in the back. Bob didn't get any cut of anything. Roger's out making money on it and giving Bob nothing. And so Bob and Roger had this big falling out right up to his death day, right before he died. Roger Patterson, that is. Bob went to visit him on his deathbed, literally on his deathbed, and Bob forgave him, and the story goes on.
It's incredible. It's incredible, and I really struggle with this in my own personal views on just the paranormal in general, and let's narrow it down to Bigfoot specifically.
Sure.
I was talking to my buddy Jim Perry on the phone the other day about this, that the mystery surrounding Bigfoot, the elusiveness of capturing the creature in any real way outside of the Patterson-Gimlin film, I would argue, and then some other videos that are out there on like YouTube and stuff, which are pretty compelling, but
Sure.
I don't think anyone's going to argue that the Patterson-Gimlin film is the most compelling footage of all. I have a hard time believing that Bigfoot is anywhere near as exciting, interesting, and fun if everybody could see a Bigfoot, and like there's people's, we got a Bigfoot in my backyard. Now they have, this person's Bigfoot has their own Instagram account, like people do with their dogs and cats, right? Bigfoot wouldn't be nearly, not to say that it wouldn't be exciting, interesting, and fascinating because of what I believe to be these above and beyond capabilities that the creature possesses potentially, but it wouldn't be nearly the thing it is now.
Right.
And I've been seeing, you travel, you're on the road constantly. Mm-hmm. I've been seeing more and more. There was one time on the freeway 3 weeks ago where the two cars in front of me, including my car, had a Bigfoot sticker on the back as we were driving down the highway.
Well, we had a client just last night that had I believe, with a Bigfoot in the middle of it.
Yeah, and we should plug the biz, by the way. Because in case you ever need. Oh, shoot! I almost knocked that over. I didn't. Good. A glass of water on the floor. In case you ever need, a member of your furry family or scaly family.
Yeah, we don't mean Bigfoot furry.
Dogs, cats. Dogs, cats, any kind of pet you can imagine. If you need them transported. Big Truth Pet Transportation.
Absolutely. Which
is named after, this shares the same name with your YouTube channel.
It does, Big Truth, absolutely.
It's a surefire way to get your pet delivered or transported safely and securely with love. But anyway, so the whole Bigfoot thing aside, as far as like the bigger issue goes, mm-hmm. I don't think... I'm sure, I can't remember, and I should be the one who remembers this, so I don't expect you to, if you don't. If we have done an interview since, I'm sure we have, right? We've had to have done an interview since the Florida trip.
Since that Florida trip, no.
We haven't. You and I haven't talked about the Florida trip. And
other than on the phone, we've had, I'll call, make sure you're doing okay,
Well, because I remember not long after the trip, you called me, because you're like, we might be going back. Blah, blah, blah. There was an outside chance. And I was like, you think I'm going back, bro? You are out of your mind. Yeah. And you're like, listen, I know. Right. But, ironically, we'll get to that later.
Yeah.
About a return trip that, could potentially happen. But awesome. Which reminds me, we need to put a call in to Carolyn later today.
Yeah.
So, to see how she's doing. But the trip was set up, because people message me quite regularly about that, specifically that trip.
Right.
And, at first a lot of the questions were like, oh, when's this documentary coming out, blah, 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 blah. And so I kind of just started telling people, like, let's not hold our breath for that, because of all kinds of things that, have happened.
Sure.
And as far as equipment and crew, and we don't need to bore people with the details of any of that stuff.
I think I can address that in a very short amount of time,
Okay.
And just simply say, I'm the kind of guy that if I make a mistake, I admit it, and I made a mistake. I thought I could manage the production of that and get everything done, and I was wrong. I learned that that aspect of filming and everything is not my forte. I mean, I'm not saying I'm above trying it again, because I would, but I can tell you that I learned a lot, and unfortunately what I learned was the mistakes I made. I didn't do a very good job of setting things up. When things were happening, cameras weren't rolling. When they should have been, they weren't. The cameras weren't where they should have been at certain times. That all fell on me. So it's my fault that nothing came out of that, and I definitely.
Well, let me interject there a little bit, because first of all, ground zero of this whole thing is we show up to the property, and there was at least one person who just didn't show up to help to do their part, which was a pretty integral part of the.
Sure.
Of the thing. So things happen in people's lives. Not everybody can just drop everything they're doing in their life and go hang out at a property for 5 days and 5 nights. It's very lucky that we're able to do this.
Absolutely.
And we're very fortunate
Absolutely.
to be able to do such a thing. And we can circle back to this later, potentially, as listeners will understand. But once we circle back to it. But as soon as we're done recording this, I imagine we'll see if the files transfer over to the hard drive I've reformatted. And I will have, because I've been telling people on here for maybe the last couple of months that I'm potentially going to have my hands on all of that footage.
Yeah, well, you're definitely going to have your hands on it. It's just a matter of
how
because your computer was you have the Mac or whatever, and I got the.
So this is exciting news, and because I thought we might get it in February, but we had this technical issue come up and we couldn't transfer the footage. But I'm gonna have all the footage. I'm gonna go through it all at some point. No promises to people listening, because I've got this other project I'm editing, as you were well aware of, like the episodes of the paranormal investigation I did at Post Town and after. But let's just tease these people a little bit and just say this project is far from being dead.
Yes, yeah, absolutely, and we have, we've got some really good footage. Don't get me wrong. I mean, there wasn't enough to create a documentary out of it, and I know that Ryan can take this, what is there, and there were, like the giant, as a teaser, and I don't want to spoil anything, but the giant X that was right there. The
biggest thing I've ever seen in my life.
Unbelievable giant X made of literally trees, and they were both ends off the ground, and 50 feet in the air. This huge, monstrous X was the most out of place, strangest thing I've ever seen. We got great footage of that. That's going to be a great thing that you can share with your viewers and your listeners, and I'm glad that at least that can happen.
Yeah, and not to mention there's a lot of stuff in there, and specifically what I think people will be, and I could be wrong, but I don't think I am on this one, which is famous last words. People will be really fascinated to see the footage from the trail cam of us walking. Sorry, that was a weird noise. There's not an EVP on this. That was a air freshener going off. Of us walking down the driveway.
Oh yeah.
The trail cam picks us up. We go into the sugar shack. I emerge from the sugar shack, but the trail cam does not work.
Does not pick that up, right?
But then later does with the flashlight.
Yeah.
Shining against the side of it as I run for my life up the driveway.
Yeah, as Ryan is running away from the little shack, what we call the sugar shack, where Ryan and I were sleeping, as he's running with the flashlight in his hand, facing behind him, and the flashlight's, of course, going all over the side of the building, and that was. I still can't understand why that didn't pick you up, when you walked out. That doesn't make any sense because
It's one of those frustrating paranormal,
really
things.
Is. Because we actually had a conversation there for a minute, if I recall. And
Well, not when I left. Other than I do remember the conversation. It essentially was only you said to me, "Be careful," or "Be safe," and I just remember thinking to myself, "That's weird. Why would you say that to me right now?" And then you closed the door, locked it up, and then I headed up.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, we were in the Sugar Shack for probably at least 5 minutes or so. I mean, we had a conversation inside,
right? Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
As I was gathering my dream journal and my toiletry bag.
And when you called me, and I want to make sure you understand this too, because I've always kind of felt a little bad about this. When you called me after you got back to the house, and you called me and said, "Why don't you come up here and stay at the house tonight?" And I was like, "No, I'm good." It's only because I knew nothing about what happened. I didn't know about your experience until the next morning. Even when I came out and everybody was there, and I hear everybody talking.
Well, you must have been half asleep then when I called you at first, when I was explaining to you. Because to be fair, it wasn't until, I was so in shock and so, I guess, traumatized or whatever by the events that I just experienced, that it wasn't until probably at least 30 minutes after I'd been in the house, after talking to David and Carolyn when she came out of her bedroom because I was making crazy noises in the kitchen at 1 a.m. That we finally, I was like, "Oh shit, we gotta," because someone said, "What did Ed?" And I was like, "Oh shit, we gotta call Ed. Is he okay?" And then you're just like, "No, I'm just gonna stay down here." And I'm just like, "Bro, you don't understand."
Well, the next morning, everybody's out after talking about it, and I guess I woke up late or something. I don't know, but everybody was already there, and you guys were out there talking, and I really had no idea what was going on. Carolyn actually took me aside, and she's like, "Now don't you make fun of him." And I said, "Make fun of who? What are you talking about?" She goes, "Ryan, for what happened last night." I'm like, "I don't even know what happened." And she goes, and she kind of filled me in a very short synopsis of what happened. And I'm like, I didn't even know, So so obviously I wouldn't have made fun of you anyway, but I might, me.
Well, I don't think you would have, because if you would have seen me in that moment, you would have known this wasn't a time to make jokes.
Right.
But that's not me, that's not me exaggerating it. I think you would have understood.
Oh, of course.
Oh, this guy, yeah.
And I did.
But Ed is a guy who definitely has really no off switch on his shit talking and his ball busting. There's zero off switch on you. But even you, in a moment, who has no off switch, would have clearly understood. But anyway, it's funny because the next night, you went back down to sleep. I remember it was the end of the night, and you went back down to the Sugar Shack to sleep by yourself, and I was going to stay in the house again. And I barely went outside that day. I think we went out during the daytime, but as soon as the sun went down, I was like, I'm not filming anything outside.
Right.
And I'll never forget, because we had the walkie-talkies. I had a walkie-talkie. You had a walkie-talkie. The three of us walk out, because it's just you, Carolyn, and myself. We walk out at the front porch. You're like, "Okay, I'm going to go." And we're like, "You don't want us to walk down there with you?" You're like, "No, I'm going to be fine, whatever. No, I'm going to be fine." I'm like, "Okay." So I'm like, "Well, be on the walkie-talkie." I was scared.
Right.
And so you're on the walkie-talkie. I'm on the walkie-talkie. Carolyn is out front with a shotgun over her shoulder.
Right.
And you start walking down. We hear voices
yes,
coming from down the driveway past the Sugar Shack.
Yeah, I remember
and
that.
So, and I'm like, "Ed, are you hearing those voices? You hearing those voices?" And as soon as the voices started, we heard the voices down in the distance. I'm standing maybe just off of the front porch. I realize in the moment that I'm slowly but surely I'm retreating.
Sure.
Right? And Carolyn's like, I hear those voices. And so I'm on the walkie-talkie, Ed. And you're like, and no, I heard it. And you weren't that far away.
Right.
Next thing you know, the walkies go dead.
Yeah.
And
I remember that now, yeah.
I'm freaking out.
I actually forgot about that, but you said
I'm freaking out, and I immediately run back. Well, I backwards run as quickly as I can back into that house.
Right.
Because I'm like, something's happening, something's wrong, something's happening again. I can't handle this.
Right.
And then I think I went to get my cell phone, and I'm pretty sure I called you. I'm like, did you get into what was that? And you're like, oh, I don't know what it was. I think it was just some neighbor or like some people on the next property over, maybe having a bonfire or whatever.
Yeah, I couldn't make out the words that were being said, but it was definitely a conversation happening. And it's odd that since then, I've actually had that same thing happen. Claudia and I were in California, up by Big Bear, Crestline, I think it was. And we had gone out to where she had videotaped her sighting of the Bigfoot in the tree, you know? And we were with another guy there, and we were coming back, and it was dark. I mean, we were out there a little bit too long, and it was really, really dark. And I heard these people talking, and like they were coming towards us. I even heard people walking around in the leaves. I heard this, you know, and I told them, told Claudia and the guy that was with, I said, look, you know, somebody's coming down probably just to see who's out here, so, you know, don't be, you know, freaking out or nothing like that. No one ever showed up, and the voices just disappeared. But clear as day, heard the voices. But no one was ever there. I even took out my FLIR and was looking with my FLIR and never saw anything. But we heard voices, and we heard people walking through the wood. We heard the footsteps, you know, the leaves moving on every step. And it was like, it was just so weird. Because it was so clear. I was so sure that it was some people from some houses on the other side that were coming through to check to see why someone was in those woods that late at night. You know, what's going on out there? You know, that's what I thought was happening. No one ever showed up. No one ever came out. No one never responded to our, hey, just letting you know we're here. You know, nothing. Ever.
And just to be clear, FLIR, for people listening who don't know what that is, it's like a thermal camera or binoculars. You have the binoculars, right?
Yeah.
So you can see heat signatures.
Correct.
Through, you know, they're a really cool toy gadget to have when you're out there looking for creatures. Yeah, because I do remember, like, I think when you came out the next day, we were going through the reenactment of what happened last night. Because Matt Maples, who was there, he was Big Matt was very skeptical. I mean, because he was the guy who was the big skeptic on that trip.
Yes, exactly.
And he left saying, listen, I don't believe in any of this stuff. You know, and we knew what he was doing because he works in like an interrogation and things like that for law enforcement. And if I'm not mistaken, his brother's in the Secret Service and his father was also Secret Service, and like they specialize in like an interrogation and stuff like that. And, you know, so they know all the tricks when people are lying.
Sure.
And so he kind of pulled me aside during that morning, afternoon or whatever, trying to catch me in a lie. And he slowly but surely the whole time we were there would just take each individual who believed in stuff. He would just act like he was having a one-on-one conversation with them, but he was working.
Right.
And he said at the end of that trip, you know, I came in here, I don't believe in any of this stuff, and I don't know if any of it is real or what is happening here, but the only thing I do know is that no one that I've talked to is lying.
Right.
So that was an interesting transformation in Matt that happened during that trip. I mean, he was unable to prove, even though he was hoping to or maybe wanting to, just due to his nature, that, you know, hoaxes, fake, whatever, and he was unable to do that. But the interesting part about that location is, you know, I've been in touch with them since, it's been over 3 years now.
Right.
You know, and I've actually went back and stayed the night in October last year.
Nice.
Hung out with Bill and Carolyn, and things are still happening there. And in fact, they have gotten more clarity on things that had happened there that they didn't even realize had been happening there, under the guise of people pretending to be something that they were not.
I heard. I know.
And we can tell, you know, we're not going to get into that here, but it doesn't. I guess the point is that location and what they've been experiencing there for years now, it hasn't faded in my, I don't want to say obsession of it, but in my interest and my borderline obsession with what's going on at that location for sure. But, and, you know, so it is, you know, exciting and / terrifying thinking about potentially going back to a location like that. And, it didn't disappoint. I mean, that's for sure. You sold it to me as, hey, do you want to go on this expedition? It's like the Skinwalker Ranch of the South.
Right.
And at the time I was like, oh, what? Yeah, sure. And then it turns out like, wow, this was...
Let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
Before we went, and a serious question, what was your expectation level? Did you think it was kind of hokey before we went based on the information I was giving you? And then how did you feel when you left? I'm just curious how much your quote unquote your belief level went up, or if at all.
That's a great question. I went in believing that there was probably something going on there. And I was hopeful that we might catch some, like a couple EVPs maybe, or
Which we did.
Maybe get something of interest, of intrigue, and it would be exciting. I mean, because you have to, for people listening too, I think what's important to keep in mind is up until this point of my life, I was only mostly doing paranormal investigations that involved ghosts. I wasn't out in the woods. I wasn't an out in the woods kind of guy. I was haunted houses, locations. I, for the most part, was interested in, that kind of... those were all the investigations I was doing. It was ghost stuff. And, maybe some alien contact thing, maybe, right at that point. But never like Bigfoot creature, cryptozoology, other than... I think I do... We went out to, like, I've been to the location where Claudia shot, captured the Bigfoot on camera, which, by the way, if you watch Expedition Bigfoot, you can see some of that footage on episode 12.
Yeah, episode 11. Season 3, episode 11.
Episode 11?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So season 3, episode 11, they talked to Claudia about her experience. It's 11 or 12. It's what, yeah.
I think it's 11. But yeah, 11
and
or 12,
so they talked to, I think you're right. So they talked to Claudia about that. While they're on their expedition. So I'd been there. We had also, Alex and I had come to Lake Arrowhead before that, maybe once or twice. And we'd walked around like the woods and things like that, looking, just seeing if there was any evidence or kind of things around there. But, and because that one night we just kind of sat in that location.
Yeah, 3 chairs out, we just sat down.
Yeah, we just sat and waited for a while, which I think is a fun way, and it's a good way to do it. You settle into a location, kind of become one with the environment, and then see if things start moving around you.
Yeah, and it gave us an opportunity to get to know each other a little bit too, because I didn't really know you or Alex very well. I mean, you guys had been out, but didn't really know you very well.
Yeah.
But that couple hours, 3 hours, whatever it was that we sat out there, maybe 4, I don't even remember. It was a long time. It was fun. It was a good time.
It was fun.
Yeah.
And we, so when I got there, almost immediately upon arrival, I don't think I was the first one there, was I?
First
I don't,
one.
and if you do hear like a buzzing in the background, my apologies, but there's just, this is part of the world of recording podcasts. There's things happening in people's neighborhoods all the time or whatever else.
You're doing some street work.
Yeah. So hopefully that's not too bad for you. But were you there already when I arrived? Because we sat in the viewing room in the sunroom area.
In Florida?
In Florida. I think I may have been there before you. Because I meet Carolyn and Bill, or actually, I don't know if Bill was there yet, but we go into the viewing room. Carolyn brings out her big box.
You were there first, yes, you absolutely.
And so by the time you got there, she had already shown me prints that had been casted.
On the property?
On the property. One of them was so big that I don't know, I can't believe, I don't think I've told people about this, but yeah, so multiple casted footprints that were from the property. She starts just telling me stories about everything that's happening there on their property. And so by the time you show up, I mean, to be honest, I was probably a little frightened of being there. And because at that time, I thought that I was the only person who was going to have to be sleeping in a tent outside on their property. Because at the time, you're like, oh, well, there's a sugar shack. I think some of them might be getting a hotel. But, and I'm like, well, I got a tent. And they're like, well, you bring your tent. So I thought I would be camping out in my tent on the property by myself.
Right.
And so she starts telling me all these stories. She shows me these casts that are huge. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm going to be in a fucking tent by myself
Right.
out here on this property. And this does not sound like something I'm into doing or I'm going to be able to mentally handle for 5 nights.
Sure.
You show up, and then we're talking about it a little bit, and Carolyn's like, oh, no, there's no way Ryan's going, you're not sleeping in a tent out here. She's like, nobody's sleeping in a tent out here. And I was like, oh, okay, good. So and then, that's when you and I were like, okay, we'll use the Sugar Shack.
Coincidentally, by the way, right where you would have put your tent, just to give you a little more fun on it, right where you would have had your tent is where Dan Butler found that footprint.
Yes.
Exactly where you would have had your. I mean, like literally, it would have walked on your tent to get. I mean.
Yeah, because that's really the only flat area land right there
Absolutely
between
right.
the house and the Sugar Shack.
That's exactly right.
Which was probably, let's say 50 yards from the Sugar Shack is where that print was, in the opposite direction of where I heard the scream or the yell from a creature of some kind. And, wow, yeah, no, I'm not, like when we talk about would you go back, blah, blah, I'm like, yeah, but I'd probably be doing a hotel for sure.
Right.
But then who knows? I mean, my curiosity would probably get the better of me because the EVPs, and I think patrons have heard the EVP. If you're a patron over at patreon.com/Ryan Singer, you can hear the not the EVP, but the audio recording of the wood knocks that last for a solid 2 minutes.
Oh, it's crazy.
That are insane.
Yeah.
I have played that recording
Yeah.
for so many friends of mine who don't believe in any Bigfoot stuff.
Right.
And they're just, the look on their face is they're like, I have no idea what that is, but that is terrifying.
Yeah, and it was coming from, and this is the most terrifying part about that. It was, first of all, it was scary enough that there were wood knocks, but they were coming from different distances, different directions. I feel different directions, but definitely different distances. Some were farther away, some were closer. You know what that means, right? That means there was more than one out there doing it. That means there had to have been 4 or 5 of them in that area that night, just trying to scare us away.
Put frankly, we were surrounded.
Correct. That's the way it felt.
And, wow, that's scary when I say it like that.
Yeah, but that's the way. No, but when you listen to it, that's the way you feel.
It feels, yeah.
You feel surrounded. Now we didn't hear it at night because we were sleeping, but when we woke up,
Thank God.
we heard it. Oh yeah.
And I'll tell you, it had to have been, just because I know I didn't, even though we were in the Sugar Shack, I still didn't sleep well.
Right.
I had a hard time falling asleep because I couldn't stop listening.
Sure.
Is anything happening? Again, that was the air freshener. Great timing on the air freshener's part. But I had a hard time falling asleep because I was scared I might hear something.
Right.
And so I remember at one point I was so close to pissing myself. And it was probably, I don't know, 1:45, probably at least 2:30 in the morning, 3 in the morning, and I'm like, I gotta piss so bad. And you're zonked out, and I'm like, I am not going outside to piss by myself, right? And so I just kind of held it.
Right.
And then as soon as the sun came up, as soon as it was light out, I woke up and took a piss. But there's something about being on that property that it's almost overwhelming at times, the feeling, the energy there.
That's what I was getting ready to say. It was not. I mean, all the activity that. I mean, I could tell you stories when you weren't there. I've been there, a few times before, and just crazy, insane things have happened that would blow your mind. And I probably have told you the stories, but it's not just the things that I or we have experienced there in our time there. It's that feeling you get, right now, just talking about the property, knowing that there's a chance we go back, thinking about, okay, we're going to go back. I already start getting that nervous feeling in my gut. I already start feeling like, okay, time to man up. Let's do this. We gotta get prepared, because I don't care how brave. I mean, things normally just don't scare me very much, but going back to there, I'm not gonna lie, it is scary. So I'm talk. You got to talk yourself into it. And it's it's going on now in my gut.
Okay, let's hold that thought for a second. We're going to get some sponsorship happening. Okay, we're back. It is. Yeah, no, I 100% feel that exact sensation in my gut, in my entire body, thinking about going back. And I'm really glad that I went back and spent the night in the house in October. That was a big moment for me to like really, because as people who listen to this a bunch know, and if this is your first time listening, the experience I had down there, you can go back and listen to. I won't retell it now because I reference it so much on here. But I believe it's 30-year bonus 166. You can go back and listen to. And I've been in therapy for 2.5 years since then. A PTSD therapist specifically is one I sought out who specializes in that. And almost from the beginning of me telling him about this, he's like, he didn't tell me I had to go back, because therapists don't tell you what you have to do. Sure. But when I said, I don't know, I feel like do I have to go back to this place to think? And he'd be like, you have to go back.
Right.
You're asking me the question? Yes. The only way you're going to get past this is if you go back to that place.
Right.
And confront it.
Sure.
And so that was good for me. I still wasn't, as much as I love Bill and Carolyn, I still wasn't like, oh gosh, time flies, I got to go already. Right. I was kind of like, okay, time to go. I woke up. But, because especially when you're there, hearing the stories and other stories you'd never heard before, it is overwhelming. And I think the cumulative amount of evidence that has, glommed itself together from different people, different times, that contributes to the overall sensation and feeling of this place. And I am a big proponent of eyewitness testimony is just as good evidence for me as a video or a photo.
Absolutely right, 100%. As and you have to. I'm a little bit different. I'm a little more skeptical when it comes to eyewitness testimony, because I look for the little flags, good or bad, But I look for little flags, and if they mark off those checkpoints, then I'm all in, And when I talk to Bill and Carolyn, every flag got checked off.
If everyone in the world could meet Bill and Carolyn,
oh my God, yeah, great people.
Everyone in the world would believe in the paranormal.
Yeah, love them to death.
And I 100% believe that and know that to be true. Yeah. But
is Bill not the nicest, funniest guy you've ever met?
He's amazing.
Yeah.
He's amazing. And just listening to them talk about the transformation of their own lives.
Right.
As far as their own belief systems. Because it's not like they're like these paranormal enthusiasts who are like,
sure,
let's get the paranormal world talking about us.
Right.
The complete opposite of that.
Yep. Yeah, we don't want to.
Yeah. So, they're not sharing their stories to try to get attention from people or anything like that at all. And not to mention believed in that stuff to begin with.
Yeah,
so
everything that's ever happened there, as far as people coming in, are people who approached them. They never approached anyone other than, I think, when everything first started happening, I think they reached out to David
to try to find some answers.
Exactly, yeah, to find some answers. So they reached out to, I guess it was the BFRO, David Wright was a member of that, which is how Finding Bigfoot actually came there, by the way. So
yeah.
So they came.
Very first episode of that television program.
Absolutely.
So for those who are curious, you can go check that out. But
yeah.
What's interesting too is that, 5 days and 5 nights, there's just no possible way in the universe that's enough time to make a documentary about that place.
Absolutely.
And, the idea too that, it's interesting because, it brought, Dan Lindholm into my life, sure. Dan Butler into my life, Bill and Carolyn. And, I still, still communicate with Bill and Carolyn, Dan Butler, made some great connections on that trip. So to me, that trip it's worth its weight in gold to me, having those 5 days and 5 nights there. And it was a real crash course for me in cryptozoology and or, because Dan Butler was sharing all these great tips about how to track animals, how to look for footprints. I mean, because that's what he did for a living.
He knows stuff.
And, Dan Lindholm, was teaching me about, like, this is the mentality you have to have. Like, you hear something in the woods, you run toward it.
Right.
And I remember the first time Dan told me that, and I'm just like, you are a crazy motherfucker. Because I remember one time during the day, it was Dan Lindholm, Dan Butler, and myself. We were at that location where, in that general area where we had the FLIR image that was caught.
Oh, yeah.
But it was before that had ever happened. And for whatever reason, the three of us were over there. Everybody else was doing something else. And they're hearing there was like a major tree fall noise that happened. And it's kind of hilly and foresty and everything.
I remember that, yeah.
And
I didn't hear it, but I remember hearing about that.
Yeah, so Dan, and next thing you know, I just see the Dans running towards this noise in the distance, in the woods, in the forest area. And I'm just like, I'm looking around and I'm like, I'm not going to stay here by myself.
Yeah.
I mean, it was like 2 p.m. or whatever. It was daylight. And I'm just like, what's going on? They're like, and Dan Lindholm just turns around and he says something along the lines of, run towards the noise. And I'm just like, fuck. So I got my handy cam. I'm trying to turn that on as I'm running, trying to not get too far behind them. And they're just heat-seeking missiles towards the noise.
Are, man. I love them both, man. They're just great guys. Man, they're just they're something else.
Yeah, really, it is really, really fun being out there and doing this. And, it can also, as many people know, it can be really scary. It can be really fun. It's funny at times. It's really exciting, and I'm glad that I'm over time I've been opening myself back up to, feeling good about doing that again, because it is so enjoyable and so fulfilling to do it. I'm curious. Oh, but just to put a bow on that question you asked me.
Sure.
When I went there, I was skeptical about the extent and to the high degree of the types of activity that were reported on this location. Not skeptical that I didn't believe that they were necessarily possible to be happening, but I was just like, all this stuff is happening here?
Yeah.
Like, that sounds like a lot, right?
It's not just cryptid. And we've been talking about the Bigfoot aspect a lot, but there's also paranormal. Like when your recorder was playing one night when you were asleep in the house, and you hear the door.
Yeah, that's. I don't like to think about that because the house is my safe place. As long as Carolyn's there, I feel safe.
Okay.
If I'm around Carolyn, I feel okay.
Right.
On that property, but as soon as she decides to go to bed, all bets are off. Right? I'm like, I don't want to be a barnacle. Like, Phil and Karen, can I sleep in here with you?
They're gonna wake up. Ryan,
I'm cuddled in the middle.
Carolyn, yeah.
And so because the door had a door stop in it.
Right.
That's what bothers me.
Yeah.
There was one of those little triangle door stops keeping the fucking door open.
Right.
And but anyway, here's the trick about staying at their house. Not that anybody listening to this, I mean, who knows? I'm not saying you'll never, or they'll never spend the night over there. But it's
unlikely.
It's unlikely. Carolyn will stay up pretty late, telling stories, talking, chatting,
right?
And Bill wakes up real early to go to work.
Right.
So if you can just stay up from 1:30 until about 5 a.m, there'll be someone else awake in the house with you.
Yeah.
So that's the key. I just don't want to be the last one awake when everyone goes to sleep, and I always am because I'm a night owl.
Didn't you spend some time in the house alone one time?
The only time I was in there alone was per Carolyn's request to do the investigation.
Yes, right.
The night, it was the same night that the thing happened, which I've got a theory about all that. I did the paranormal investigation that same night. Later that night is when the scream yell happened.
Were they at home at all, or were you in the house?
Carolyn was home.
Okay.
And she was out on the front porch while Bill was gone.
Gotcha. Okay.
And then I felt bad about having to put Carolyn outside by herself. I was in there with Ozzy, their dog. R.I.P. Ozzy.
Yeah. Great dogs.
And then eventually she came back inside because she was like, "You don't mind if I just wait inside?" And I was like, "No." So she went into her bedroom. Bill comes home a little bit later, and they're both just in the bedroom reading.
Right.
For about the last hour and a half or whatever it is of me just in the home with all the lights out and everything going around. And there's actually some interesting video that I was looking at not too long ago of I can't be 100% certain, but I think there's something outside of the kitchen window at one point because I remember just walking over to it and I remembered the feeling when I saw the footage. It's of me slowly but surely like walking towards the kitchen window with a camcorder, trying to focus on what I believe I see through the blinds outside the window, that something's moving or something's happening out there.
Right.
And on the camera, I'm freaking out a little bit, like, oh my God. But this was obviously before I got genuinely had the shit scared out of me later that night. But because I do believe that I opened up a line of communication that I wasn't necessarily prepared for, who was going to ultimately answer that call out into the world, which happened later that night. So let me make sure I'm keeping an eye on time here. But when it comes to the overall feeling of going to a location like that, talk to me, if you can, a little bit about the difference between going to a specific location like Bill and Carolyn's and then going to like Soha or which are also specific locations, but the difference between like Bill and Carolyn's and going out into the forest or the woods.
Yeah, I mean, and that's a really good point. Usually when I go out in the forest, I mean, I'm not personally, and I know people who are, and I respect their opinions, but I'm not into the whole paranormal Bigfoot thing. I don't necessarily buy into it yet. I'm not saying I haven't had some really weird experiences, which I have, while having a Bigfoot experience. So it's, I get it, but but when I go out into the woods, I'm looking for signs that something has been there. Okay, when you go to a location like Bill and Carolyn's, you're going out and then you're like, okay, happened. Okay, one, I'm looking for things that have happened in the past, because it's
like something that is there as opposed to something that's been through there.
Correct. Because the odds of going out in the woods looking for Bigfoot, for example, and actually finding them are astronomically small. Right? It happens from time to time, but and some people claim to see them every time they go out. But I believe that the odds of having an experience when you go out into a vast area, if you're sitting in your house and you heard somebody come in the back door and start walking through your house, you're either going to, number one, get up and face them, but if you don't know who they are and you get scared or you get nervous, you're going to go the other way. You're going to know they're there before they know you're there. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
Gotcha.
So, and if, but on the other way, it's the exact opposite. You're going to a location and you're like, okay, show me something. Show me you're here. Okay. And it did. For example, the night we got the FLIR, you mentioned that earlier. The night we got that little FLIR footage of the head looking over the hill. That night when we were doing the paranormal investigation in the house, well, when you guys were, I was just filming. I was sitting in that open window. I don't know if I even told you about this or not. I was sitting in that open window.
They have this great viewing room because Bill has built the.
I'm referring to the little haunted house, the small.
Oh,
house.
Oh, that's right. Because everybody else was over on that location.
Correct.
Yeah.
No, you were there too. The night I'm talking.
No, I'm
about,
saying when this happened though.
Oh yeah, when you were doing your paranormal investigation in the house, yes, we were actually over at the other property. Exactly. Yeah, we were next door basically at a little.
And this is when this happened that you're going to tell me.
No, this was.
Oh, it was when we were all over there.
When we were all there, and the windows were missing. The openings were there, but there's no glass.
That house has been since torn down.
Has it?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. That's probably a good thing.
Yeah.
I was sitting in the windowsill with my back to that little field, all right, and I just got this creepy feeling like something was just literally going to grab me and pull me out the window. You know, I mean, it was the creepiest feeling. And again, I don't scare real easy when I'm out there. You know, when I'm doing something, because I'm looking for it. You know, but it got me so much that I literally got up and I moved. You know, so that my back wasn't out that window. I actually got one over by the fireplace, I think, and had my back up against the wall. And when we go out, that was the exact spot where Dan Lindholm said he heard something stand up and run down the hill, which is when everybody kind of went out there. You know, you guys were already out there, but we all went out and we heard the thing go down, and apparently it came back and was watching us because we got it on FLIR with its head looking over the hill. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah. Right where it was outside that window, and I was sitting there. And I'm going, man. So and I say all that to point out, when you're doing an investigation, the really cool thing about doing an investigation is you become hyper attentive. You know, you feel things that maybe you wouldn't normally feel. You know, because you're waiting for it, you're expecting it. You don't get that normally anyway when you go out into the woods hoping to find evidence somebody came through. But when you're going somewhere where you know there's things going on, your senses light up. You know, your sense of smell's better, your sense of hearing's better, everything is better.
You're on high alert.
You are. You become almost too alert. You know. And I think that causes a lot of people to have misunderstandings about what actually may have happened.
Some false positives.
Absolutely. So, I was in the woods one time, true story, and I heard something. I swear to you, it sounded like something bipedal was walking just on the other side of these trees. I literally got down on my hands and knees, looked underneath the trees with my camera, thinking in my mind, I was going to get this son of a gun's feet as he's walking down behind this tree. And it was a little quail jumping around in the leaves, but it sounded like I was so attentive. And that was a false positive, you know. But that's why you investigate. You investigate it further, and you find out whether that's true or not, you know. And in that case, it wasn't. But that's, to me anyway, there's a difference in going into the vast open and going to a specific location where things are happening now, you know.
Yeah, and something that also really fascinates me, because for me there's you know, there's different parts of an investigation, and one of the you know, really fascinating, interesting components of any investigation is research after the fact, of trying to make sense of or put some context to
or debunk
something that happened. Exactly. And being able to, and the more information we can read or learn can add extra context to things that may have seemed meaningless when they happened. And I mean, a good example of after the fact, obviously, is, you know, anytime you're reviewing EVPs, you know, that's a very simple one, because obviously you can't hear EVPs in the moment necessarily. I mean, we're looking for things that aren't picked up necessarily by the ear when something's happening. But that to me is like a really fun part of the investigation process, is trying to reverse engineer through a clue that you believe you may have gotten during the investigation. Reverse engineering, what is the meaning, what is the message, what is the identity of this thing?
Right.
And I mean, that's the harder part, because it's time consuming, and it's a lot of sitting at a desk or in a couch or whatever, but with headphones on or otherwise. But the preference, I don't know. I think if I had to prefer going to a location or just kind of going out and see what we get. The location obviously comes loaded, right? So it might be, but then there's also times where I have more of a wanderer spirit, and just want to see what happens. So I don't think I could pick which I'd prefer, but I mean, going to a location obviously is really, really fun. But I mean, we were driving through the Smoky Mountains yesterday. And I mean, obviously you're you and I'm me, so the whole time we're just like, Of course a Bigfoot could live out here. Look at all this.
Right, look at all this, yeah.
I mean,
Let's prove it.
yeah, right. And so I actually have a photo of us where at one point we stopped to stretch our legs, and I've actually took a couple photos of you with your flashlight because we heard something. I mean, we don't. It could have been a rabbit, or it could have been anything else, but we definitely heard something in the woods right there off the highway.
Yeah.
Yeah, so maybe I'll throw that photo online for people so you can see. But
you don't mind if I okay that first, right?
no, of course. Well, you're pretty blurry in all the photos because you're moving around constantly.
I am Bigfoot.
Yeah, right. So I wonder, if, well, we've been talking for almost an hour already. So I guess we can, and there were some other things I wanted to get into, but we'll just have to do another one later.
Part 2.
I think it's safe to say that we're going back to Florida.
I'm all in. 100%.
And just so people who know, or people who are listening know, I've already had preliminary conversations with more than a few people involved. Every single person was an emphatic hell yes, please, let's do it. I think the main thing stopping us from ever returning was me in the first place. I was the first stumbling block as far as me wanting to ever go back. Because there was like no way in hell I was ever going to go back there. Right. That didn't mean that you and other people weren't going to go back, but for me, the number one stumbling block was me and my own fear. And I've never understood the old classic phrase, whether it was Winston Churchill or not, who said there's nothing to fear but fear itself.
Right.
And I always thought that was a great line.
Sure.
I never understood it until about 8 or 9, maybe a year ago, 8 or 9 months ago. One day it really clicked for me. Because when I think about going back there and I think about how scary it is, the fear I have associated with that location is I'm scared about how scared I could get again.
Right. And I think that's, and I have, and I think I may have even said this to you in the past. I've always felt kind of bad because I never realized how bad that affected you. I didn't, even when we were there, I just didn't get it. And that's why I was always like, calling you, hey man, are you doing okay? Just want to check on you, make sure you're all right.
And it's one of those things too, where you just never really know what somebody experienced unless you experience it yourself.
Sure.
And that's just the rub with all of the paranormal in general.
Absolutely.
Oh, before we get into this about going back, I want to talk to you about what you heard that night when this happened.
Yeah.
Because I've told people what I remember you telling me.
Yeah.
Do you want me to say that, or do you want to tell me what you remember, if you remember?
No, I remember clearly because it's always kind of confused me because and without telling the whole story, I'm not going to tell the story, but as Ryan left, I pulled the door closed and I locked it, and I turned around and I was taking my stuff out of my pocket, getting ready to set it down, so I could lay down, and I heard what sounded like a car horn. Beep, that's what it sounded to me like. And in my mind, I thought, you had your keys, you turned around and locked your car door because your car was in that direction, okay? And then you just walked on up the hill. And then never thought another thing about it until when you called. I believe we discussed it when you called. I can't remember if we talked about it on the phone then or if the next morning. But I remember we had the conversation. I'm like, I did hear your car horn, So inside the Sugar Shack, what I heard was totally different than what you experienced outside the Sugar Shack. So that was odd. And that was kind of confusing.
And to be clear, like the Sugar Shack has pretty thick walls. It's a wood structure.
Sure.
But it also has like a really old window unit, air conditioning.
Yes, that was running.
That is running constantly because we were down there in the summer and it was Florida. So that was on and it's pretty loud. But 100% never, I didn't even have my keys on me.
Right.
I just walk out of the Sugar Shack and I take a left to head up the driveway as opposed to a right down the driveway towards a gated, like a fence, like an old wood fence kind of thing, where I would have had to open the thing or just walk through it. They didn't have a gate on it at the time. Now they do. But you walk down the driveway, and my car's parked. My car was parked on the other side of all this. So just to give people listening an idea visually, I'm standing somewhere. The scream comes from in the middle of me and my car, essentially. And the Sugar Shack is kind of right there adjacent to that middle part.
So whatever screamed at you was within, 30 feet of the Sugar Shack?
Yes.
Gotcha.
And it wasn't like a long howling thing.
Right.
It was very short, succinct, and high pitched. And it had like some vibrato. But it wasn't like these long Bigfoot howl things that people have that are recorded and stuff like that. So it makes sense to me. You heard, because everybody knows a car, like when you're locking your car, like beep beep or whatever, it's very high pitched.
Right.
So, like, it gave me so much comfort understanding that you heard it.
Right.
Even though it sounded different or, whatever, but you heard a high-pitched sound.
Yeah, I heard.
At that exact time.
I heard what I interpreted as your car horn. And as soon as it happened, again, it never really was even a thought in my head. It was just, Ryan locked his door and went on. That's all it was. And in fact, in hindsight, I probably should have thought, why did he lock his door? We're here. Nobody's going to break into that car where we're at.
Definitely the car was not locked.
Yeah, or miles from anybody. Not literally, but close. And so it was. But I definitely heard it. Yes, I heard what you heard. Just heard it differently.
Yeah, exactly. So, because I think I've told people on here that.
And the timing of that, by the way, if you look at and we did, we looked at your footprints outside, and when you heard it, because we see. In that sand driveway, we see you turn around. Then we see your footprints running, with your stride even farther. You could see exactly when it happened. And I literally, so you weren't 15 feet from the Sugar Shack. And I had literally just turned around and emptied my pockets. So the timing of the two were right on, And so yeah, it was 100% what I heard was what you heard. It just didn't come through the walls the way it did in the open outside.
Yeah, exactly. So, kind of what we've been teasing this whole time. If all goes well, and according to plan and scheduling and things like that, we have the 100% go ahead from Bill and Carolyn to come back, and we're talking extended stay again.
Good.
The same as before, and. See if we can't get closer to the truth of what's happening.
Sure.
And we'll definitely have a lot more gadgets. And the reason I'm bringing this up too is you and I have talked to some people. We know some people with equipment and things like that. But
we'll step it up a notch, right?
We're definitely 100% stepping it up a notch.
Yes.
As far as preparation and it's just simply by default of me having filmed a bunch of projects for the last 20 years that I know some more people and potentially we can see. But if you were listening to this right now, and now I don't know what kind of response this is going to get, so let's temper things here quickly. That depending on circumstances, depending on availability, and depending on a myriad of other things. If you're listening to this and you've been like, I've been wanting to go to this place ever since I heard about it on this podcast, and you know what you're doing with a camera, you should reach out, because we definitely were shorthanded by no fault of our own last time with crew, and we just couldn't get the coverage we needed because of circumstances beyond our control.
Sure.
So if you're thinking that you might want to crew up on this thing, you definitely should reach out to me, and we can have that conversation. There's a couple different people I've talked to already about it that I think might work out. That could be great, but it's always good to have options and backups and things like that. So now, as far as like everything else that goes along with it, You know, those are all details that can be discussed later as far as like lodging and,
Right.
you know, well,
Bring it
do
down.
you just want do you want the experience to come out and film and be part of the project, or are you like a professional camera person who's like actually looking to get,
A gig.
you know, the day rate for, you know, 5 days and 5 nights?
Right.
You know, I don't think that's necessarily within our budget
Sure.
here. So, but I'm also not trying to, you know, get indentured servitude
Sure.
from people. So,
I do have a friend who has a drone that has night vision and FLIR on it.
which is
So-
definitely something we have to use.
Yeah, he's coming. So that's
Yeah, and so, yeah, it's going to be great. And I think, you know, after anybody's been at this property for more than 12 hours, let alone 5 days and 5 nights,
Absolutely.
you're just like, holy smokes,
Right.
right? So if that's something that might be of interest to you, you should definitely reach out to me and we can see where we're at with it. And I'm just going to put this up tonight.
Yeah.
So it'll be pretty timely as far as me
Nice.
recording this and putting that out there. But know this, now that I'm going to have all the footage, which I'll have later today, working and able to go through it, plus the additional footage we're going to be getting, which I don't believe will be, okay, we were here again for 5 days and 5 nights. We got it. I don't think that's the case at all. I think it's going to be a longer term project than that.
Sure.
I think it'll require multiple visits to the location and multiple interviews with people who are involved, like later, to get perspective on things. But yeah, we'll see. But I think we really have something that will really blow people's minds
Absolutely.
and just shed some light on like the reality of these phenomena that are happening in, you know, quote unquote, everyday people's lives
Sure.
that they can't explain and they're not exactly big fans of
Right.
necessarily happening.
I'm almost disappointed to hear that the house has been torn down.
It would have been nice to go back. I just remember when I drove there, I was looking for it and I couldn't, because I was like, because that would, to me was a big marker for where the creature sighting happened.
Yeah.
Because I remember at one point I was kind of by myself at one point because everybody spread out in that big field area again during the daytime. I think it was the next day because we were all over there.
Yeah.
And then before I left by myself to go do the paranormal investigation, I was kind of by myself in this big clearing area, and I look over and there's this creature on a kind of a pile of wood, logs, and things like that
Right.
because the hurricane had come through and destroyed a lot of the area.
Right, there was a lot of damage. Yeah.
But maybe it was a stump. I look over and I see this thing, and it took me half a second before I realized it was like a deer.
Right.
Because I was just like, it's a deer. I thought it was just like, like
Deer.
75 yards away from me.
Right.
But it was really cool just to see that even.
Well, that place was the scariest I've ever felt in that entire, anytime I've been there. And it's the place I felt when like something like someone was gonna grab me from behind. And it's the place where we got that EVP. There's so much there, so much happened there for me and us that was like one of my favorite places. That's what I want to do again.
I mean, we found a nest there. I've got, photos of the nest on my
Yeah,
phone.
And the giant X.
The giant X, the footprint that we cast,
Crazy.
the tree knocks,
Crazy.
the EVPs that happened in the house,
Yeah.
the EVP that happened over at the ramshackled house that's now been torn down.
Right.
Let's leave on that one. Tell those people what we got here.
On UVP?
Just to set up the stage,
Oh,
Dan
the-
Lindholm and I are
Yeah.
doing a paranormal investigation while everybody else is kind of hanging out
Yeah.
outside, looking around, and I'm kind of walking Dan because he'd never done a paranormal investigation,
Right.
and
I was filming, by the way. I was
so-
the cameraman for this.
yeah, so Ed's filming. We're going around this house. There's spiders and cobwebs. There was probably 100 spiders in that house. It was
Yeah.
kind of scary.
Yeah.
And eventually we decided to go outside.
Right.
I'm like, let's take this because we're not really getting anything that I could tell. So I'm like, it was feeling kind of like dead in there a little bit to me. So I was like, let's go outside the house and see if maybe we can't summon some orbs.
Right.
So we all go out, and you leave a digital recorder behind.
Yeah, I was the last one out, so I turned on a recorder and I left it in the house on top of your bag, I believe, and I just set it on top of, or at least a bag. I don't know whose it was, but I believe it was yours. I put it on top of a bag so we wouldn't forget it. We came back in, and I go outside too. So you guys are on the back side of the house at this point doing your thing. I was over talking to our armed security, you know, which we had to have with us, you know, which I think is awesome, you know, and they were watching YouTube on, you know, watching comedians on YouTube, you know, the good ones though, you know.
Yeah, see, there's that off switch.
Yeah.
It doesn't exist.
I'm kidding. So, and then Dan yells like, hey, you know, we got something. So, you know, everybody jumps out of the car. You know, I'm already outside, but everybody runs around to the back. So everybody who was in this production was outside this house. Everybody's accounted for.
Not only that, we're like away from the house because we're like headed towards this thing.
Yes. Well, all that happened fairly close to the house, but then Dan got something on FLIR, and of course, right as he does, the FLIR dies down the road. So that's when everybody kind of got away from the house. But when no one was around the house, and later on, I get home. As a matter of fact, I didn't do it there. Actually not until I got home, I was listening to all the audio, and on that recorder that I left in the house, while no one was around the house, you hear what sounded like an old chair or a couch slide across the floor, maybe a foot, you know, real quick, just, and then a voice clearly says, "They're outside," and it's like, what the hell?
That's creepy.
And nobody was in there, you know. But and you're gonna have that, you know, you're gonna have that tonight. I'm gonna give you all that footage, and you're gonna have that recording as well. So
yeah, you've sent it to me before in the past because you're like, you got to hear this shit.
And there was nobody within 100 yards of the house at that time. Nobody.
Yeah.
So,
and that's not and to be clear, this is like if you drove by it on the side of the street, you'd be like, someone needs to tear that place down because you know there's no windows, the roof's halfway caved in, the walls, you know, there's holes in the building. It's like it was like an old wood shack but giant.
When I went in, I told you guys when you guys were coming in the house because we had to jump over the porch to get in. Remember? We had to really maneuver to even get in the front door. And I remember saying, don't stand too close together, you know, because I don't want too much weight in one spot. People fall through the floor.
Oh, I thought you didn't want us all to die at the same time if the roof caved in.
No, I wanted everybody away.
No, I do remember that.
That would be funny, though.
Yeah. No, I remember that. Don't get too close together because this place could collapse at any second.
Exactly. Stay apart.
It was in shambles, this place.
Yeah, it was bad.
But, you know, I've actually, you know, I think I may have posted photos of that over on the Patreon a while ago because got some great photos from Dan's son.
Man, scary looking house.
Scary looking house.
Yeah.
But, well, Ed, this was great. Just as a reminder, BigTruthPetTransport.com is the website. If you ever need any pets transported, check out the website. Great operation over there. You know, I help out here and there.
Yeah, absolutely.
When I'm on the road, got some time off.
Ryan's actually a great driver, and hopefully when you get more time, we can do this again. You know, but I would, if you don't mind, can I plug one thing real quick? Would you mind?
No, of course not.
September 8th, 9th. 10th,
oh yeah,
11th.
Yeah. Okay, say that again because I just got excited.
September 8th, 9th, 10th, and 11th in Vernal, Utah. There's going to be Phenomicon 2022. I will actually be there as the MC, but just so you know, some of the people who are going to be there is going to be the entire cast of Secrets of Skinwalker Ranch is going to be there. The entire cast of Expedition Bigfoot's going to be there, and a lot more. Adam Davis is going to be there. You might know him as Adam Davies, but in England it's pronounced Davis, so Adam Davis is going to be there. And the list goes on. There's a long list. You can go to Phenomicon.com and check it out. It's going to be a lot of fun. But if you're anywhere near that area, you got to go check it out. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I mean I wonder if I'm off during that time. I should go there and just try to, see if I could get anybody to do some podcast interviews.
Yeah, absolutely. And so it'd be a lot of fun.
No, but yeah, check out Phenomicon. Co-hosting the whole event.
I am emceeing.
Or emceeing.
Yes, yeah.
Emceeing the whole event.
Right.
So yeah.
Well, Russell Acord from Expedition Bigfoot. He's that guy that goes out by himself.
Russell Acord is tracking the scent of a large predator that he believes is following him.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. I've always thought it's pretty easy to catch something that's following you. You just turn around.
And for the record,
he walks for hours.
You guys are really good buddies.
Yeah,
so.
yeah. Russ and I are good friends. I was actually at his house the other day, so that was pretty cool. You know,
Yeah.
we got to have lunch, breakfast together and stuff.
You know, maybe I'll get him on the program one time. I've touched base with him to see if anything could work. You know, it's my hope that that'll line up eventually. But, you know, people are busy, so we'll see what happens. But because there's one more episode left of this season, I believe, and you know, I've been enjoying it. I think it's, you know, if you're looking for a paranormal program that's on TV right now with new episodes coming out each week, that is outside of the ghost realm. For sure. I don't think you're going to find anything better right now.
They've done 3 seasons now. And,
yeah. So there's a lot to dig into if you've never seen it. You could go on a binge and just try to close your web browser from Amazon.com while you're watching, or you're going to try to buy all of the different gadgets that they're using, and you're going to be out $100,000.
Yeah, right.
I mean, it's some real high-tech shit that gets in on the show. It's bonkers.
Yeah, it's crazy.
It's just like a paranormal investigator's wet dream watching that.
Oh my God! You know, and I got to tell you, you know, as much as I like finding Bigfoot, Expedition Bigfoot is just on another level.
Yeah, I haven't had a chance to watch any of the new Finding Bigfoot yet, so I got to give that a go.
Sure.
But you know, I only have so much time between binging The Boys and.
Well, Cliff and Bobo are friends of mine as well.
Yeah.
You know, and I mean, yeah, and I met Matt and Renee, but I don't.
But yeah, it's time to watch episode 1 of Finding Bigfoot, by the way, so you can see the location we've been talking about for an hour.
Yeah.
But or at least a little bit of it. So, okay, well, Ed, this has been great.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's always fun, and thanks for including me into this, because I always love talking
Sure.
about this, and actually sitting around with Ryan here is always fun.
Yeah, we had a good time driving too, and and by the way, patreon.com/Ryan Singer. I've been traveling for probably 3.5-4 weeks now, so apologies for sporadic content, but I'm going to be posting little snippets of some of this footage I found that we've got from Ed about Florida on the Patreon page. So if you want to, you know, get sneak peeks of some of this stuff, that's the way to do it. It'll also help, you know, all the patrons help fund the paranormal investigations and things that I do. So, and the more people doing that, the more, you know, expeditions I can do and things like that. So thank you, by the way, to the new patrons who have signed up, and thank you for listening. And I hope to see you at a show. I'm on the road from July till the middle of July till the end of August. The August is this year. RyanSingerComedy.com/tour has all my tour dates. I'm all over the place. So check there for tickets. St. Louis, Cincinnati, Louisville, Parkers, West Virginia, all kinds of places. So check it out. I love you. I hope you love yourself. You deserve it. Ed, thanks again for doing it.
My pleasure.
And until next time, which will probably be like in a day or two.
Yeah, we'll do it.